Pioneering the center, this pawn immediately stakes a claim, opening diagonals for queen and bishop. Establishing immediate central presence challenges white's initial pawn advance, setting the stage for a classic queen's pawn opening struggle. Instantly challenging, the center creates immediate pawn tension and opens lines for piece development. Black embraces the challenge of recapturing material, temporarily surrendering central pawn presence for a dynamic piece development opportunity. Developing the knight to f3 efficiently reinforces central control and prepares for kingside castling, a classic and solid approach. Pawns usually advance to control squares, but this one seems to be preparing a queenside expansion or a knight retreat. Reinforcing the center's control paves the way for piece development and potential kingside expansion. Developing the bishop aggressively pins the knight, creating immediate tension and forcing white to react to the potential disruption. Seizing central control and initiating piece harmony, this recapture solidifies white's pawn structure and prepares further development. Solidifying the pawn chain with e6 prepares for knight development and seeks to control central squares, a crucial step in developing a robust pawn structure. Pressuring black's queenside pawn structure immediately, this threatens to exploit weaknesses with queenside expansion. Sacrificing the bishop to disrupt white's pawn structure and open lines offers a dynamic counterplay. Opening the g-file dramatically compromises white's king's safety for some compensation on the queen side. Unlocking the file for the rook seems like a premature ambition, potentially isolating it from crucial central defense. Developing this bishop prepares for castling, while eyeballing that isolated pawn, potentially setting up a future central push. Developing the knight here addresses its potential for central influence and prepares for castling. Developing the knight here solidifies the center and prepares for castling, creating a harmonious structure. Developing the knight here aims to solidify central influence and prepare for potential c5, while keeping options open for the bishop. Solidifying the bishop's postion here prepares for the king's safety, while white eyes potential pawn advances. Opening a diagonal for the bishop and challenging white's queenside pawn structure creates dynamic counterplay. Opening the center, white aims to exploit black's undeveloped queenside and seize control of the critical d5 square. Solidifying the pawn chain, black bravely establishes central control, aiming to disrupt white's immediate kingside pressure and open avenues for piece development. Securing the queenside space and challenging black's pawn chain structure is the immediate aim. Developing the bishop to d6 solidifies black's center and prepares for potential kingside castling, while indirectly challenging white's a4 pawn push. Securing the king now frees up this rook for active central involvement. A subtle repositioning, the queen seeks a safer haven and prepares to connect the rooks, reinforcing the queenside's structural integrity. Securing the king's escape route opens up lines for piece development and potential pawn advances, preparing for the middle game's complexities. Gambiting pawn control, you're opening fascinating attacking avenues for your queen and bishop. Initiating kingside pressure, this rook's repositioning prepares to exploit the weakened pawn shield surrounding black's monarch. Abandoning the pawn structure for a potential tactical skirmish, exposing your king to greater danger. Unlocking the kingside pawn chain creates dynamic attacking chances. Reclaiming the initiative, black bravely steers their knight towards the central outpost. Developing the bishop opens lines and prepares for kingside castling, anticipating black's potential aggression. Finally, your king finds shelter, but the king's side now faces potential weakness from your pawn structure. Sharpening the central grip, this pawn thrust aggressively probes black's nascent queenside fortifications and prepares to exploit potential weaknesses. Centralizing the knight seeks to contest the initiative and potentially target weaknesses on the kingside. Pivoting the bishop to d3 reinforces the kingside pawn storm's momentum, aiming to pry open the center. The rook retreats, aiming to find activity on the file, a subtle but potentially effective repositioning. securing the king's flank with an eye toward potential queenside expansion. Boldly challenging white's central grip, this queen maneuver seeks to exploit newly opened diagonals and potential weaknesses around the enemy king. Clearing the queenside for bishop activity, this maneuver aims to free up the queenside pawns and activate the light-squared bishop. Injecting energy into the center, this offers the rook a path to the open e-file, potentially challenging white's kingside pawn structure. A bold assertion of central space, aiming to liberate the queenside pawns and challenge black's cramped position. Consolidating the rook's presence on the d-file enhances central control, preparing for potential pawn pushes and piece redistribution. Unlocking the c-file for your rooks is the main idea here, forcing black to react. Sacrificing a piece to disrupt white's pawn structure opens fascinating tactical possibilities. Seizing the initiative by opening the f-file, white aims to exploit the exposed black king and create immediate threats. Seizing the open file, black reclaims material while aiming to disrupt white's pawn structure and central control. Seizing the open file with the knight promises to dismantle black's king safety. Suddenly, black gains full command of the d-file, a critical central artery for future operations. Shifting the rook to the g-file aims to exploit the open lines and potentially support a pawn push, but overlooks the immediate threat on the d-file. Reinforcing the central file and preparing for a potential breakthrough with the queen and rooks. Focusing on the open f-file, this advances the rook, readying for potential infiltration or pressure along that critical central corridor. Focusing the queen on the d-file aims to disrupt white's central pawn structure and potentially open lines for black's rook. Repositioning the rook to the semi-open f-file now contests black's advancing pawn majority. Introducing a potent rook to the open d-file, aiming to disrupt white's central control and exploit any lingering king safety issues. Clearing the path for the queen and reinforcing the d-file offers positional leverage. Opening the e-file finally allows your rooks to become active partners in this tense maneuvering battle. Pressing the advantage on the queenside to gain space and potentially open lines for attack. Seeking respite from the pressure, the knight ventures to the wing, hoping to exploit potential weaknesses and improve its position. Liberating the queen and opening the bishop allows for tactical opportunities amidst the centralized pieces. Capturing the bishop opens a critical diagonal for the queen, potentially reigniting black's attack. Sacrificing the rook for positional compensation might be the plan, aiming to disrupt black's pawn structure. A bold attempt to occupy the open e-file, seeking counterplay against white's potentially exposed king. Safeguarding the king's safety becomes paramount as black's knights infiltrate white's territory. Sensing white's exposed king, black prepares to activate the remaining pieces for a potent mating attack on the weakened kingside. Unlocking the e-file for the rook promises to disrupt black's entrenched pieces. Targeting the weakened queenside pawns with the queen suddenly creates significant pressure along that flank. Reinforcing the d-file's occupation solidifies control, seeking to disrupt black's advanced pawn chain. Consolidating the queen on the open file offers a better chance of counterplay against the white king. Liberating the rook frees your queen for a more active role while simplifying the position. A pivotal capture, embracing the endgame's shifting dynamics and opening crucial lines for active pieces. Queen on h3 aggressively eyes black's weakened kingside pawns and seeks to exploit the open g-file.